Right, what's up? Good morning on both Facebook and Instagram. This is the PT on Ice Daily Show. Jeff Moore, CEO of ICE and lead faculty for cervical and lumbar spine management courses. Happy Thursday, everybody. So we've had some crazy weather out here in Colorado. My kids are off school for the second day in a row. We had a huge blizzard come through. So those who are up in the mountains, I'm sure, are having an absolute blast. But it's been nuts. We don't normally get this kind of snow down here in the Front Range. So glad I'm not traveling until tomorrow morning. But it's been a pretty crazy weather system the past couple of days. So hope everyone's doing good. As for me, this tomorrow taking off to Fort Wayne, Indiana. Tomorrow I get the privilege to do 19 point, what are we on, team? 19.4 with the great crew at CrossFit Fenton. So we've got a CMFA live course going down in Fenton, Michigan at Mitch and Allen's gym. Zach Long is going to be there with those guys. Got a ton of people coming, so I think we're going to have multiple waves of 19.4. So we'll find out tonight exactly how we're going to suffer in public, but looking forward to doing that. It should be a hoot teaming up with those guys, then driving down to Fort Wayne, Indiana for the course. Big thanks to MedStar from last weekend. Huge course out in D.C. You guys all packed the room. Great engaged people, so had a blast there as well. So course is coming up real quick. Monday we got two kicking off. So we got Modern Management of the Older Adult, our 8-week online course, and then our CMFA Essential Foundations 8-week online course as well. So two online courses kicking off on Monday. A handful of seats. I saw the low stock notice, so a handful of seats in either of those if you want to jump in. And then, of course, Ice Sampler. I know we've been talking about it like crazy, but Ice Sampler is coming up April 6th, 7th, unless you're testing for certification. Then you'll be there on Friday the 5th. Wrote all my test questions, so really big written exam on top of the oral and practical. So for those who are going to be there testing, I can't wait to see you and engage with you and challenge you a bit. It should be a really fun couple of days. So a lot of great things coming up. And now let's kick off Leadership Thursdays. So I did that episode a few weeks ago on what is leadership and maybe how it's a bit different than how many perceive it. But one of the bigger parts of that conversation was talking about, what is followership and how in many ways I feel that followership is really the sexiest thing about life, right? It is being humble and following someone and allowing yourself to be molded and developed and how I think that sometimes leadership gets too much credit when you really look at what we're trying to do with our time here. I think that we overstate the appeal and value of leading and dramatically understate the appeal and value of following. And so after that episode, we had a lot of great discussions at weekend courses about, well, what exactly is followership? Jeff, we sit at dinner, on Saturday night, we always, after the workout, of course, so we're always usually soaked in sweat and try to find some outdoor seating, but we're sitting at dinner and talking about, what is followership then? And how do you find people to follow, which evolved into this conversation of what do you look for in a mentor? And had some really rich discussions around that in the past couple of weeks. And so I really sat down on a couple of plane flights and thought about, what do I look for in a mentor? And if we're going to talk about celebrating followership, we've got to talk about finding people to follow. And that's what I want to talk about here for the next 10 or 12 minutes is what are some of those characteristics of people that have been great to follow and significantly transform my life. And that at least from my personal perspective, things that I look for in individuals who I want to express my followership around. Right. And so here are three that I really, and I enjoyed writing this episode more than I have in a long time because there was an awful lot on the whiteboard that had to be crossed out and reorganized and really get down to what are the three key characteristics, if I had to boil it down that far, of what I'm looking for in a mentor, someone that I am thrilled to express my followership in their system. Number one is they are less about confidence building and more about character building. So what I mean by that is somebody who is saying, oh, Jeff, you can do it, man. Like, you're ready. You can do it. Rah, rah. That kind of attitude is exactly who I don't want, right? I want somebody who is hyper-focused on the gaps, right? Not hyper-focused on my existing skills because that person's not looking to get me to the next level. I want somebody who's hyper-focused on my gaps, right? So people who are constantly encouraging you, those are not mentors, those are cheerleaders. And I am not saying those aren't important people. Like, you need to have people in your life who are sort of puffing you up, right? Because life can come down on you, and you need to have folks around you who are almost infallibly supportive. But they are not your mentors, right? Your mentors are the people who are willing to identify those gaps and are hyper focused on those gaps because they know if they can close those, they can advance you to that next phase. Right now, in this, being aware of this is probably the best way to thin the herd. When you're looking for who you want to seek out as a mentor, this is the people who are willing to be in that place where they are hyper focused on gaps is probably the best way to thin the herd, because most people will give you praise. In today's day, most people will give you praise. Very few people will give you true, unfiltered criticism. So just being aware that that's the kind of person you're looking for, who's willing to do that to you and for you, is going to thin the herd dramatically on those that are probably going to create significant development when you follow them, right? And when you allow them to carve that path out for you. I would go on record saying, partly because of the rarity of it, right? There's no greater kindness that one can do for another than to deliver unfiltered criticism, right? Unfiltered feedback. Hey, yeah, you did some things that were great. This was not great. Like, and here's how we can get it better. And here's how we're going to chart that course forward. Like, those uncomfortable conversations, when somebody is willing to have those with you, you know that you have gotten yourself in a position of trust, and they are expressing a tremendous amount of kindness, because it's not an easy thing to do. It's so much easier to pat somebody on the back than to be a mirror for them, a true mirror, and help reflect the areas they still need to grow. That is a much more challenging conversation on every level, right? It's by nature just more uncomfortable. It's harder to find those gaps. It's much harder to work with someone to identify the gaps and help them realize they exist without a whole lot of feedback and ego noise. So the point is, somebody who wants to be there because they care more about your growth than your short-term feelings, that is a special person. And there aren't a lot of those. And that's what you're looking for mentorship. And I think if you can find those people, right, it's going to be hard amongst all the noise, right? You're going to see some really significant value in their presence. So number one would be, the individual is less about confidence building and more about character building. They are rare. So when you find them, hold on tight. Number two, they've been in the arena, right? So they've been doing, or maybe are still currently doing, or have been doing, right, a lot in the arena that I want to succeed in. Now, I want to qualify that, because I love Teddy Roosevelt's "The Man in the Arena" poem as much as anybody. Like, I love that the credit, right, is due to that person, right, with the blood, with the dirt. I love that idea, but I will qualify it by saying, I don't think the person has to still be in the arena. They had to have done their time, and it's fine. It's great and fine if they still are. But I have gotten some tremendous value from people who are recently removed from the arena. They don't get me wrong, they have done their time. They've been there. They have reflected. They have grown. They have shown the skill in real-time action. But there's something too about being slightly removed, because when you're actually in it, there are those natural biases of an ongoing active scenario that you can't quite see until you've removed yourself just a bit from it. So the person has got to have done their time there. They don't necessarily still have to be there. Some of the older folks that I think have imparted tremendous wisdom on me in my life certainly put in their hours, right? But now they've removed from it, which has given them in some ways a perspective that allows them to guide you within it, I think in a way that can't be done until you are removed. So I think maybe a combination of people who are truly in the weeds and have all of the noise and the challenges and demands that come with that, and then some people that have been there and now are a bit removed, that can give you a little bit more of a multi-angular perspective, I think is due. Now, I want to say, like, I want to qualify the reason someone has got to have put their time in is, for example, I know quite a bit about wine. So for those that I've talked to, I bartended for years here in Colorado at Dominic's. My whole way through graduate school, I have spent a lot of time with wine. I have read a lot about wine, right? I know a good amount about wine from a book knowledge perspective. But you would never want me to mentor you on the making of wine. Because the actual thing I haven't done, right? I haven't spent that time. I think about, we used to host winemakers for winemakers dinners here in Fort Collins. And I remember sitting around the table. We would fly them in from California and they would sit and talk about their wine. So those whose wines we sold a lot of, they would come to the restaurant and our chefs would prepare meals for them and they would do a whole wine dinner. And they would talk about why they grew what they grew and how it worked out in the vineyard. To listen to them speak, to listen to them almost daydream verbally, right? Sit back and talk about how they made these decisions to, when to prune, when not to prune, why they blended certain vineyards together, why they sourced certain grapes. The feeling in the art of that only comes from doing it. The intangibles, the nuance. There is no other way to get that true level of actionable skill and excellence than to be in the trenches. It's unaccessible anywhere else. I think about my wife and I love going to small wineries in the off season and catching those owners talking about, again, their decision making and how much of it is on feel and how much of it is on gut and repetition. And we're going to go now and here's why. To listen to that completely exposes certainly myself as being a fraud, right? Somebody carrying a lot of book knowledge, but actually not having the goods. What I'm saying is the last person I want to follow is somebody who has an abundance of knowledge and an absence of experience, right? There's nobody that I think you ultimately get less from than somebody who just has that didactic knowledge. They don't still have to be in the trenches, but there is no doubt they had to have had that sweat and that dust in that life, because it's from there that the fullest expression of understanding exists. And if you don't have it, you don't have it, right? And so I think that that's a huge one, is they have to have been there. So number one, less confidence building, more character building. Number two, they've been in the arena, right? They either are in the arena or they've been in the arena. Number three, though, as I looked at the whiteboard and kind of hashed all this down, number three is the biggest one for me. And when I'm looking for a mentor, when I'm looking to express my followership, and that is the individual is further along the path of contentment. When I really look at what is it I'm actually looking for and seeking, it is individuals who are further along the path of content. Right now, the definition, so I looked this up and was trying to find the right words. And the definition of contentment is a mental or emotional state of satisfaction from being at ease in one situation, body, and mind. That is the person I'm looking for. Somebody who knows thyself, right? Because that's what we're trying to transform. Right? That's really what we're trying to do, is transform ourselves into a better product, right? And we're using life's modalities and certain activities and certain talents and professions to as modalities towards that. But that is ultimately what we're looking for. Right? Now, these people, how do you find that person? What is it evidenced by when somebody is further along that path of contentment? For me, the biggest one, it's evidenced by temperament. Right? So as you're trying to seek out these people, right, the things that stand out to me are those that are deeply content, right? Their temperament is different. Specifically, they are really tough to rattle, right? So they're just tough to rattle, man. They're tough to get frustrated because they are more concerned. Like when arguments come up or opposing point of views come up, they are more concerned in actually finding a common ground of progress than winning an argument. Okay, the reason this is true is because they've already won a much bigger game, right? They don't need the win. They don't need the win, right? Their ego does not depend on the win. And because their ego doesn't depend on the small win, they are able to actually zoom out and say, well, what is best? Where's the common good here? Right? What is best for each individual? How can I help them recognize that? It becomes more about creating the collective good because the individual win isn't needed. Because once you know yourself, once you have that feeling of contentment, your emotions are not ebbing and flowing on small wins. You're operating from a very different position of personal control. It is people that have gotten to that point who, number one, can invest in you in a very pure way, right? But number two, They don't have the need or the ego-driven desire to gain small wins in every argument discussion that comes up so they can see the bigger picture so they can help you see it. I think when you're really looking at what you're looking for, at least for me, it's that. So the big three, right, of many that were on the board. Number one, less confidence building, more character building. I don't need a cheerleader. Well, you need cheerleaders, but in my mentor, I don't need them to serve the role as a cheerleader. I need them to serve the role as a gap finder, right? Number two, they've been in the arena. They either currently are there or they have done their time there. And they don't speak from didactic knowledge. They speak from true experience. And number three, they are further along the path of contentment, right? They are in that place where they don't need small wins, so they can help me find the bigger win. Those three, because I think that the question that's been posed to me is very fair. Jeff, what do you look for? And I hope that helps. I hope that gives some experience from where I come from. Always happy to answer questions. Love Leadership Thursdays, folks. I love hopping on here with you all. Let me know what's going on. And tomorrow, tune in. I'm sure we'll have some live broadcasts on Instagram, on Facebook, from 19.4, CrossFit Fenton, Mitch Babcock, Alan Frenendall, Zach Long, all going to be in the house. I'm going to be with Zach Morgan. We've got Jordan there. We've got Dustin, Christina. We've got everybody coming down. So we're going to have heat after heat of all of us getting destroyed by 19.4. So cross your fingers. No muscle ups, right? Certainly no ring muscle ups. And we'll see what else we can handle. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Have an awesome Thursday.